And tweet. Oh, we're live. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is I, your host, Lateral, aka Lateral FF on the Twitter. It is good to see you all. It has definitely been a long week. We all saw Mike Davis's quads, and basically I just haven't recovered since. So been dealing with some loss of sleep, as that's been in my head all week. But in all due seriousness, it has genuinely been a crazy week for me. So I am gonna kick back and relax just for a second, and then let's get into it. So again, been an interesting week in football. We've had everything from Mike Davis and his quads blowing up the internet, rightfully so, to Tim Tebow and his potential employment blowing up the internet, maybe less rightfully so. The trend of maybe anyone can play tight end has been an interesting one this past week. We've seen Tim Tebow get picked up by the Jags and officially signed. He's got a contract. He's in the uniform. He's got a number. It is potentially real. We'll see if he makes the team. Once 53-man rosters are required. But for now, he is a Jag. Maybe he's always been a Jag, but that's besides the point. However, we also got Kelvin Benjamin coming in because David Gettleman was like, everyone thought I had a really good draft. What's the best way to kill all that goodwill? Oh, I know. I'll bring in my third tight end of the offseason. It'll be a failed wide receiver from my past that I'm clearly just helping out. Don't get me wrong. Kelvin Benjamin was definitely a talented wide receiver. He probably got derailed by injuries in his time in Carolina, but should he have a spot as a tight end on an NFL roster? I'm less than convinced. I bet there are some more deserving people out there. I just do. But I'm not going to judge anyone for getting a second chance. What I am going to judge them for, though, is their awesomeness, their quality content. And I can't have more quality content than my first guest, Cody, aka at Smash Hit Sports on the Twitter. What's going on, man?
Man, we are just having an absolute week. I mean, it sounds like you are having a great week. I know I myself am having a phenomenal week. It's good to be able to talk some football, man. I know we got NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs going on, but football is always and will always be king. You love to see it. So I love we get a little bit of Kelvin Benjamin news. Haven't heard his name in a while. It's good to be back. It feels like 2015.
It wouldn't be the lateral. It wouldn't be going sideways if we didn't spend like most of the beginning of the show talking about Tim Tebow and Kelvin Benjamin. Anyone can talk to you about maybe the potential impact that Taysom Hill likely starting for his dad, Sean Payton, and what impacts that'll have. Oh, come on. There is only one logical reason that Taysom Hill is an NFL quarterback, and it is because Sean Payton is secretly his father. It's the only explanation. I refuse to hear anything otherwise.
And make for a phenomenal Disney movie.
We'll see if it will. Isn't that Disney movie going to be starring Kevin James? Did I see that right?
Yes, dude. Oh my! I am thrilled to watch a little Kevin James impersonate Sean Payton. We'll see how that goes, but it's something.
Don't get me wrong. I will be the last person at my 265 pounds to ever fat shame someone, but just objectively, unless I miss something, Kevin James and Sean Payton are not the same weight. Like, they're not the same weight class. Like, I don't know what I missed there. He's an incredibly talented actor. I have zero against him. He kills it. He's a better comedian than I will ever even hope to be. But I just, like, other than maybe his face looks a little like Sean Payton, I'm not sure what the connection was there.
Yeah, I mean, neither. It's really interesting to see how actors get casted in sports movies. And I love me some Kevin James, but that's a question mark. That's a question mark.
Because honestly, even if he got into good shape, not impossible, again, good actor, but like, I genuinely feel like he's a good couple inches shorter than Sean Payton. Though I guess I don't have a good grade on Sean Payton's height, but I digress. Cody, great to have you here. You, of course, are a fantasy football contributor over at Real Deal Fantasy, at Real Deal Fantasy on the Twitter. So How'd you get started playing fantasy sports?
I originally started with fantasy football, right? Like the OG, love me some fantasy football. I played football in high school, played football in college, love the game, right? Love the game growing up. Like it was always like it was appointment television to sit down and watch on Sundays. So my background with that came with me and a couple guys on the football team wanted to, still be involved in football. So it started in high school, and man, that's been probably a decade ago. And it's just been great to continually grow that love for the game, right? Because I think we all kind of start playing a little redraft and doing some like normal standard fantasy stuff. Now I'm in like 16 leagues, all different styles and formats. Like it's crazy. I love it. It gives me like, not that I needed an excuse to watch every game on Sunday, but now I have one and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say we've had the odd guest with an interesting story. I cannot remember for the life of me who it was. It might have been Angelo from Angelo Analysis.
Yep.
Does the phenomenal player evaluations. I think his first league might have been an IDP league, just like hitting him out of nowhere with it.
That is such a like interesting league to start with. Like IDP is a very unique fan. Like you don't see that very often. Yeah. That is such a unique league to start out as your first one, man. That had to be difficult because finding really good IDP information can be difficult at times. I know there are a lot of really good fantasy content creators who put out IDP content, but man, back in like the pre-Twitter space, like I feel like that would be pretty dang difficult.
Yeah. No, like you've got to do a whole nother level of research. You're literally looking at the complete other side of the field. I know I had one friend who he tried to start commissioning some leagues. I think the first year he did IDP and he was like, oh, this is a terrible idea. And then the next year he decided to make kick and punt return yards count as yardage for players. So Eddie Royal was a wide receiver 1 that year because he was both a contributor on offense for the Bears, but then also did all the kick returns.
Oh man, I came near the Antonio Brown in his prime, like when he was a stud receiver, and then
when he was already a wide receiver 1 anyway.
Yeah. Or Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman was a phenomenal kick punt returner. That's crazy. That is crazy. I love it though. I love it. That's what fantasy needs. A little spice. It can get kind of overdrawn at times. We need the energy. I love it.
Yeah, don't disagree at all. Okay, so how'd you get into creating fantasy content though? We know how you start on the fantasy journey in general, but you're now contributing regularly to a good site, Real Deal Fantasy, LQ over there, absolutely phenomenal. So how do you get into creating fantasy content? What's your journey there?
Yeah, LQ is absolutely the man. You are correct there. But I started primarily because I was with my fiance, soon to be wife, and she, quite frankly, could not give a shit about fantasy football. And I just really needed somebody to talk football with. And moving in with the fiance, it's like, hey, I need somebody to talk to. So why not talk to the internet? The internet seems like a cool place. They're really helpful and kind all the time.
Famous last words, to be sure.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Let's spread a little love to the internet. And started creating some doing some stuff on my own, get my feet in the water. And I got in touch with LQ and he's like, hey man, let's do some writing. Let's get on the site. And I was like, man, that sounds like a hell of a time. So it gives my engineering brain a little work. I do a lot of math and a lot of numbers, and I'm actually the exact opposite when it comes to fantasy football. Don't get me wrong, analytics has its place, but I'm a big film guy. I love watching football and being a part of it. And I feel like that's kind of what I bring to the old fantasy space. That and a lot of juice, man. You got to bring the energy, but it's fun. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost because people grind fantasy content. They put in a lot of hard work and effort, and you can really tell.
Oh yeah. And I sometimes I don't get how they do it.
But it's fun. That's what fantasy football should be fun. And that's, even though I get home and I kind of oh, hey, I'm going to go and sit and watch LSU from 2018 because why not? Makes you feel good. It gets the juices flowing. It's something I really enjoy. So, yeah, man. Shout out to RDF or Real Deal Fantasy.
Well, we've kind of hinted at it already, and absolutely shout out the homies over at Real Deal Fantasy. But you talked a couple times now about watching college football tape. How much college football do you watch?
Entirely too much. Entirely too much. So I watch all of the, I kind of divide it up, right? So I will watch all the big games during the week. I'll watch them live because I just enjoy the pageantry of college football. I don't think there's anything quite like it. But something that I love doing is going back after the season is over, right? And evaluating what the guys that because you see flashes, right? When you're watching week to week, right? And you're watching these big name teams and the big programs, you see guys flash and you see guys jump off the page. What's exciting then is to go back and take a deep dive into those guys. So I probably watch, probably 5 games every Saturday for 10 straight weeks. And then I probably watch another 10 games 5 or 6 games a week for another 10 weeks after that. I probably watch 100 college football games a year. And like, it's exciting because college football doesn't lose it. Like it's so different from the SEC to the Pac-12. Like it's so different, like across conferences. And then you get some of those smaller schools, the guys who can really play. Like it's fun, man. It's fun. I love me some college football. That's what that was my first love, was college football. There's not really a fantasy.
I'm guessing a Notre Dame fan, by the way, right?
I am. Go Irish. Go Irish. You love to see it. I live about an hour from the stadium now. Not that.
Oh wow.
Not that I have it measured from the time it takes me to get from my driveway to the stadium parking lot, but yeah, that was my first love. Born and raised in Indiana, so the old luck of the Irish. Big Rudy fan. Greatest sports movie of all time.
So not a Hoosier then, not a basketball guy. Was it the proximity to South Bend that made the difference there?
No, it's actually that I'm terrible at basketball.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Man, growing up, like basketball is so. Indiana has 9 of the 10 largest high school basketball stadiums, which is wild for what Indiana is, right? Like you think of some of the massive schools and high schools like across the country, and 9 of the 10 largest basketball arenas are in Indiana. Like when Hoosier hysteria is a very, very real thing. Like people go out, like who have no connection to the schools or the teams, like go to watch these games on Fridays and Saturdays and even during the week. So it's a blast, but I was good enough to good enough to play, but never good enough to like actually make varsity. So I was like, man, football's my thing. It always has been. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy some hoops, but I enjoy the hoops guys who transition to play tight end. Man, we're just not going to get off tight ends all night tonight, are we?
No, tight end's definitely the hot subject in fantasy and in the NFL, but we'll stick a little to some college football, especially since it is such a passion for you. I happen to go to basketball schools myself, first Temple University in Philly and then University of Maryland, who famously got their chip against your Indiana Hoosiers there.
That they did.
I remember watching that as a little kid. Still have an autographed picture of Juan Dixon from that year. Nice. I got to touch the championship ball, and I will completely nerd out on college basketball. That's like my college sport for sure. But when you're watching football tape, what are you looking for? What is the criteria that you're using to evaluate these rookies?
So the thing that you have to really think about when you're evaluating tape is you can't compare it to what they are doing against their competition, right? So you see guys who explode off the page, but that's not necessarily against NFL talent. So guys who have that breakaway speed in college might not actually have NFL caliber breakaway speed. So my thing that I've always did is, okay, let's see who they're playing first, right? It's one thing to do it again, but like for Kyle Pitts to do what he did against Alabama is a little bit different than what
Zach Wilson did against anyone he ever played.
Exactly. Right. And don't get me wrong, like you can still, like there are still incredibly talented players who come out of small schools, but you have to evaluate them a little differently, right? So the first thing that catches your eye is always the non-coachable skills, right? Size, speed, quickness. Like you can't coach those things at the NFL level. When players are getting from the college game to the pros, physically, for the most part, like they don't have a lot of room to wiggle. And that was something that kind of cracked me up this offseason. It's like, oh, wait till Devontae Smith gets into an NFL weight room. Like Alabama was some sort of like strength and conditioning program that doesn't exist. It's the best in the country. There's a reason they've won so many national championships. But the non-coachable skills are something that you have to, like, that's the first thing you identify, right? But then you looked at attributes that transfer to the NFL. Route running is something that transfers to the NFL. Being able to hit a hole in an offensive line in a run scheme is something that transfers to an NFL level. As a quarterback, being able to get from your second to your third read is something that transfers at the NFL level because not a ton of guys have to do it in college. So when you see a guy who's able to do it at a high level, Justin Fields was great at that. Trevor Lawrence was great at it this offseason. Getting from those first to the second and third reads, because – and don't get me wrong, like Mac Jones was good at it too, but it's a little different when you have all of those weapons and all of that talent. So that's something that you have to consider. And then the biggest thing is, what do they create after that, right? Because we don't know where these guys are going to land, right? Sure. We have no idea where these rookies are going until after the draft, right? And landing spot's important, and I'll say landing spot does matter. It does, especially in redraft, right? It's much more important than redraft than it is in dynasty. But that being said, that is something you have to take into consideration because coaches ask players to do different things, right? Kyle Shanahan asks George Kittle to do something entirely different than what Andy Reid asks Travis Kelce to do. They are both incredibly talented, right? Nobody's denying that. But it matters where you land. Right? Tua wasn't asked to push the ball down the field. Joe Burrow had to, otherwise he was going to die behind that.
Which he still did anyway.
Which he still did as a Bengals fan. Tough, right? It's man, that wasn't great. But like, there are a lot of like those types of things are what you have to identify when evaluating a rookie. Can they create their own? Can they create after contact? Right? Because the Najee Harris running behind Alabama's offensive line is what you are going to have free and open space. What makes him special is what he does after he gets out in that open space, the way he makes guys miss, the way he runs through tackles. That like amount of separation, because you see guys who are like, and I don't like shitting on players because I feel like it's kind of disrespectful. They're at the NFL level. I mean, these guys are ultimately talented. Yes. But you see a guy like Kenneth Gainwell, great, has elite speed, but you never saw him drive through and finish through guys at the college level. And it's been a year since he's played, right? Took a year off. So that's something that, like, when you're evaluating talent, can you differentiate between guys who can really create for themselves or guys who kind of get in the open space, they find the open space, but once they get there, they're limited, right? Yep. And it's exciting, but yeah, that's always the biggest, like, that is something that when you're in dynasty, you have to value like a player's talent over everything in dynasty.
So how do you approach our dynasty roster construction then? Like, if you're doing a startup, what are you looking for? What's a strategy or two?
I will say this until the day that I die. And I don't think I'm the first one to coin this, but I will die on this hill. Every single league is a tight end premium, and you cannot convince me otherwise. There is not a single league where the tight end position does not set you up for success above and beyond what any other positions can do, right? That the elite tight end position is so incredibly valuable. You've seen what guys like Kelce, Kittle, Waller have done, even in like our recent past, right? You get guys like Jimmy Graham in his prime, Gronk in his prime, Antonio Gates. Those guys were unguardable, and the separation between your top tier tight ends and your middle tier tight ends, you're essentially 1 through like 4 or 5, and then like 6 through 12, is substantial.
My buddy Jeff Crisco puts it as, there's no such thing as a middle-class tight end. You've got your top of the top. There might be one other guy that kind of flirts with that. And then the rest, it's like, if I'm going to go for tight end 6, why not go for tight end 8? If I'm going to go for tight end 8, why not go for tight end 12? It's like, if you don't get one of those top 3 guys, it makes a huge difference.
I agree 100%. And that's where you have to, if you don't value the tight end position or can't get one of those top guys, that's fine. What the mistake I see a lot of people do is they miss out on those like top 3 or 4 or 5 guys, and then they go and they reach, and then that never helps anybody, right? Like a lot of guys last year got really high into Noah Fant and Jonnu Smith, and they reached for these guys. And the difference for when they don't succeed is like, you could have waited so much longer and gotten a guy like Robert Tonyan. So it's but that's my first thing is I always kind of like is start with the tight end. And then if you're playing super flex, quarterback is super important, right? And that's something that there are not very many phenomenally talented quarterbacks in the league, but there are a ton that are adequate, right? So that quarterback 2, there are plenty of adequate quarterbacks. If you can get a guy, though, that can really set himself apart as your quarterback 1, that's great. I don't like going back to back and getting like some really top, like I'm not getting Mahomes and Lamar or whatever. Like that's
Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. You're going to wait and get a Sam Darnold or a Baker Mayfield later at a cheaper price.
Exactly. And the value that you can get if like you get a guy like Ryan Tannehill who has a phenomenal season, but if you draft him late, like the value that brings to your team is awesome.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then the last thing that I do, I sell my mid-tier running backs. They don't have the mid-tier running backs don't have a ton of value in my mind. And the reason being is I play fantasy football to win games, right? Sure. I do not play fantasy football to have a Jeff Fisher-esque season to go 8-8 and then to like waltz my way into the playoffs and get bounced in the first round, right? When you start to get those mid-tier guys that are diminishing in value, sell before the road's gone, right? Because you get a guy like Melvin Gordon's a great talent, but he hit his peak and he went to Denver and he had like a really solid year in Denver. That was the time to sell because then you get a guy that comes in from behind. David Johnson, another guy that like I'm a big fan of talent-wise, but his situation changes, right? And that happens a lot when running backs get to like right around that first contract. So there are a lot of guys that like I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones. But after this season, I'm probably going to go look to sell because I think he'll have a great year. And then you can get the most value. You can get I think he finishes as a top 10 running back, right? But then it allows you to sell him at that high value, get a ton of picks because everybody's running back needy. Get those picks and then get the young guys because there's always going to be 1 or 2 running backs that are really going to be stars as rookies. And I think that transition's a little easier between like running backs. You kind of know a little bit more than wide receivers. They're a little bit more of a shot in the dark. You know, there's guys that always surprise us. Brandon Ayuk last year. I mean, a lot of the fantasy sharps are like, hey, keep an eye on him, man. And did he jumped off the page. Literally
jumped off the page and then over some Eagles. It was great. Again, as a Niners fan, 0 complaints about Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, you gotta love him, man. The Niners have had an off season, dude. Off season. That's been a blast.
If you want to hear more of my thoughts about the Niners offseason and their season going forward, you should actually check out the Niners preview I just did for the Bacon Games podcast. It's over on my Twitter. If you want to check it out, you can go to the Bacon Games Sports Network, Twitter, check it out there. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to check out our next guest. We got Chris Robin, a.k.a. Detroit Beastie. What's going on, man?
Good. Hey, boys. Great analysis, right? Cody, I don't think we've ever crossed paths on a broadcast, but I always try and tune in wherever you are. I've seen you with Mendy a lot at Triple Play. And while you were talking, I took a whole page worth of notes while you guys were talking because, again,
love it.
I mean, my opinion isn't that valuable, but when you're on a broadcast, I hate to have dead air. I get like, gives you the heebie-jeebies, right? It makes you uncomfortable. Yeah. So I'm never without notes. So we're good to go here, boys.
Awesome. Well, right before we get into the portion where we need some notes, let's first introduce our guest properly. We, of course, got Chris Robin, contributor over at The Undroppables, at The Undroppables on Twitter, Gridiron Rating, at Gridiron Rating on Twitter, Team Riser Fall, at Team Riser Fall on Twitter. You're sensing a pattern with these Twitter handles, admittedly. And, of course, a contributor over at Fantasy Pros as well. I don't even need to throw that Twitter handle out at you. If you're playing fantasy, you know what the Fantasy Pros are. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you on here. So I'm going to ask you the same question I started out with Cody here. How did you get started playing fantasy sports?
Well, I just turned 37 last month. I have no qualms telling my age. We're not in show business. I don't need to put on a show.
You don't look a day over 36.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what? I legit thought he was going to say mid-20s, and you just smile and nod. When you're on a live broadcast, you kind of just smile and nod. So born and raised on the east side of Detroit. Huge Lions fan. That's no secret. And my group of guy friends, we're still friends to this day. We've been friends 30 years. We just up and started our own in 1995. So I was in fifth
That's
grade
awesome.
in elementary school, knowing nothing. We didn't even know what it was called or nothing. We just sat around in at the lunch table and just started drafting guys. No order. We put names in a hat and went from there. First overall pick was Barry to me. No big deal. But so 95, I started playing. And then again, I'm not going to, lie and say I've been playing nonstop since 95. There was a big lull. There was a 10, 15 year lull until high school or right after high school. And then back in college, and here we are. So I've been going strong for at least 20, 25 years. And back then, I mean, this isn't profound what I'm going to say, but I remember, given my age, as you said, not a day over 36, where you had to wait for the Sunday paper to get the box scores.
Oh yeah,
and you had to tabulate it that way. And then and I remember way back then in the mid to late 90s, we can kind of week to week we just make up the scoring. Well, if Barry had 200 yards, he should get 400 points compared to Thurman Thomas. So you get in a schoolyard with a bunch of young boys, anything goes, and it was a blast. And I've always looked back at that experience to, fuel everything I do now. Because if you're not having fun, and surrounding yourself with people you enjoy being with, then get out of what you're doing. It's not fun anymore. It's just not what you want to do. So that's how I got started long time ago.
Okay, well, we now know how you started that super fun journey into fantasy sports, of course. Definitely playing on that Lions fandom a bit, talking about those schoolyard arguments that, of course, led to the creation of things like PPR. Because let's be real, like PPR doesn't exist if someone doesn't go, okay, well, why is this receiver like not getting credit for doing the like one job he has to do, which is catch the damn ball?
Correct.
But how'd you get into creating fantasy content then? You hinted at it a little, but it went a little more of the story.
Well, to be fair, I never had any interest in writing about, dynasty football or redraft, like 10 years ago. It was, I mean, it's so popular right now. I mean, let's be honest, it's huge. It's exploded. And I never had any interest in that. My interest peaked at the inception of DFS, FanDuel, and then DraftKings followed there. And I was playing every day, not knowing anything. We're talking 2012, 2000, yes, somewhere along those lines. And I was playing, and it just seemed like, I'm sure Cody can agree here, we're always looking for the next challenge. I want to write an article. I want to do a broadcast with person A because it's fun. It's a challenge. I don't want to be left, in neutral, spinning my tires. And DFS was new, it was fresh, and it created this buzz and all this other ways to be creative and to be strategic. That's what I love most about fantasy sports is the strategic moves here. So when DFS came out, nobody was writing about it. We're talking that, that long ago, and I was trying different methods, and I was always writing stuff down. I've always been that way since I was a boy, just write everything down. Love to draw, doodle, whatever. And so I was writing things down, and then there would get to a certain point, month after month or year after year, when I go, you know what? I wonder if they have like a value chart for DFS players. Didn't exist. So I said, you know what? I have all these notes. They're already logged in chronological order. I'll just start writing it and trying to publish that stuff. So I made my own content because nothing was readily available. So it got from that point to where it is now, where, everybody's talking strategy or stacks or fades and all these buzzwords here. But that's the only reason why I started writing. It was DFS and trying to put out something that I couldn't find myself.
Gotcha. So do you have any advice then for new content creators? It seems like, find your lane, find what you're passionate about and kind of hammer in on that. Yeah. Seems to be the way you're leaning, but anything else, more profound than what I'm able to just pull out of the air there?
No, that was good stuff. And I know, again, everybody, bangs the drum for if you're not having fun. Well, I mean, gosh, I said it myself 10 minutes ago, but, do what you enjoy the most. Like if you don't enjoy DFS, why are you going to write it? If you're going to wake up in the morning, right? Like just like personally, I wake up in the morning, I do my notes the night before, and then I wake up and I build my graphics and I enjoy it. I absolutely love waking up, feed the cat, have a cup of coffee, and then I do my graphics. I look forward to that each and every day. If you're going to wake up tomorrow, Friday and go, oh man, I got to do my rankings. I don't want to then don't do it. If it's not something that is, very much enjoyable to you, then why are you doing it? It shouldn't be a chore. Even being on a broadcast or playing in fantasy leagues and drafts and getting together, it's all something to look forward to. We can romanticize, well, hey, all the COVID restrictions are lifted. Maybe next time, boys, we can do this live and in person. It's always something to look forward to. If you're not looking forward to your rankings or a broadcast you got coming up this weekend, then why are you doing it in the first place? Because I'm telling you, the passion and the joy that people have is clearly, we can see through the bull crap. It's clearly, shines on your face. So if you're not into it, and if it's something you're like, you're going to be eaten alive. So go and jump in with both feet, but make sure you absolutely love doing it. You look forward to it.
I couldn't agree more. That's part of why I like doing these shows. It's the thing I think I'm the most passionate about personally, like getting a chance to interview some people. And like, I've had an opportunity to interview some incredible people already, like just in the brief time I've been doing this. And it is absolutely a blessing. Cody, didn't actually get a chance to ask you this earlier. So I'm going to ask you now, what advice do you have for new content creators now that you've been doing this for a while?
I think a lot of people, like, they get a little bit of imposter syndrome and try to compare, right? Like, don't compare yourself to the guys who've been doing it for a while. Guess what? Matthew Berry, he's probably have a little bit more experience than you, right? You can't compare yourself to that off the get-go.
Well, Chris,
right?
Chris is 37, so maybe they're not so far off.
Man, you were just firing off shots.
Wow.
Poor Chris. He's just out
you
there.
invite
invite
me on the broadcast. You tell me you're running behind, and I'm still nice enough to join the broadcast, and then you spend the last 10 minutes putting me down for my age.
I see it not as putting you down for your age. I see it as building you up for your wisdom.
Thank you.
All about perspective. Anyway, Cody.
Yeah, no, my biggest thing is like, don't worry about how many followers you have. Worry about creating good content first, and the followers come, right? LeBron did not go and worry about how many people were watching him shoot free throws. He shot a bunch of free throws. He put in that work, and now he's the most watched athlete in the world. Like, go and put in the work. Enjoy what you do. The followers will come. Don't worry about that. Don't compare follower counts and views and all this. I know we get caught up in the likes in the social media world. It's not about the likes. It's about providing value, right? Building Correct. A community. You know how awesome it is to be able to talk with people that, you have not met in person, but like, hey, I'm internet buddies with that guy. Like, we have a really good relationship. He asked me like questions about his lineup. We give some good feedback. Like, building a relationship like that with your audience, much more valuable than worrying about a follower count or a number, how many likes you get.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. All right. Well, Chris, I hinted at the wisdom already a bit. So we're gonna take advantage of it here while we got you on. So you talked about DFS. How do you approach playing DFS? I feel like DFS, it's obviously a growing space in the industry, but I feel like unless you're genuinely really good at it, you might not have a clue what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, first and foremost, you have to have some sort of strategy. Just like when I was waiting, for you to bring me on and put me down this many times, Cody mentioned, he likes to, sell off mid-tier running backs, and that's his thing. Or he looks at, his fantasy teams, and they're all tight end premium because of the drop off. It's a cliff and it's not close. Well, in DFS, you can't be meek. You can't be like, oh, well, that's $1. If I don't want to, you have to be able to try a ton of stuff. I've lost a ton of money, but I've written it all down. I keep it in my mind. I can look back at that because I build a strategy, trial and error, just like anything we do in our lives. We do something, we fail, we learn from it. Could that be called a mistake? Sure. But if you learn from it and you're better the next time around, then it's not really a mistake. It was a learning experience, or is a point for you to bounce off of. So I would say don't necessarily worry about the cash flow that's coming in and out, especially in today's day and age. There's hundreds of contests that are a penny, 2 cents, 5 cents. Do something that you can, sink your teeth into, write it down and come up with a strategy, right? Whatever it's, I know that contest selection is a huge thing. I know guys playing 10 years and they still can't hit, on a daily basis because their contest selection is all screwy. You have to be willing to take to dive in and try strategies and go from there. Trial and error, a lot of hands-on stuff here.
Yeah, you've talked about the contest selection, and my buddy Jordan, who we've had on the show, he's doing some stuff with the Rum Boys, I believe now with
Vanek.
DFS, and so he talks about like going in and trying to hit those single entry contests. So that way, it's like you're going to build your best lineup. You're going to go against someone else's best lineup rather than a bunch of people who it's like, well, I know if I spend X amount of money but get Y amount of entries, I can kind of game the system. Do you have similar strategies in terms of your contest selection?
Yeah, as it stands right now, yes, absolutely. Like those massive GPPs, tournaments. There's 50,000 people in there, and it's $1 to get in, and your max entry is 150. Lineups. That stuff favors the sharks, the guys with the big bank. So I stay away from big tournaments. Single entry is cool, but I've kind of I don't want to say evolved. That makes me seem like some DFS egomaniac, but I stay away from main slates. I play the smallest slates possible. After hour slates, no matter what sport it is, it's only 2 teams. I can hammer home every single combination of player and team stacks that I can do there. So I would say start slow. You're not going to win. Winning in one of those big tournaments, you have better luck going to the corner gas station and getting a scratch off, or playing the Powerball numbers. You have, the odds are like, it's just unbelievably not in your favor. So anything you do when it comes to DFS, you want to spin everything to your advantage in favor of the percentages to you, right? So if I play in, a 3-man contest and there's only 2 games, well, I'm confident I can clean up. That's why I play 150 of those exact contests tonight. 3 players, so it's me, and I only got to beat 2 people. There's only 4 games. I can hammer home, as I said, every combo, and I can win consistently doing that strategy night in and night out. I've been doing that for about 3 years now after I stumbled across it. Again, trial and error. I didn't know this strategy 3-4 years ago. So here we are, and just make sure, again, play responsibly. I feel like I have to preface, play responsibly. If you can't lose it, don't play it, but enjoy it. That's the whole point of this thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's definitely nice of you to make sure that you had that clarification there. I think you got to kind of just be responsible with playing fantasy in general. It can definitely, as we all know, be a little bit of an addiction at times.
Yeah, if I may, I just published, the Undroppables published it. It's a 3-part series. Only part 1, I think, is out. It's I Hate Fantasy Football. And each article is 10 players that I've identified. And I know we all know that. And the one that comes to my mind in the first article was too many leagues, guys. These people, guys or girls in today's day and age, I mean, heck, dogs and cats are probably playing it now, but you get someone gets in 75,000 leagues, and that's unrealistic. You can't keep up with it, and then everything around it suffers. Like, hey, Cody, I sent you 4 trade offers last week, and you're, well, what league? I never saw it. And it's just like, it's irritating. And again, I was going to say it's not my business, but I'm in a fantasy league with you. It is my business. So you have to identify the stuff, and in too many leagues, guys, is probably my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah, I think it's an understandable one, to be sure. It's actually a reason why I personally make sure to keep my numbers a little lower. Like, if it's something that I think would be really meaningful, really valuable, I've got a particular friend that I'd love to play some fantasy with, I'll do that. But otherwise, just I may think you're an awesome person, but it's dude, I've got 6 leagues. I cannot add 7, 8, and 9. I'm not going to be the league partner that you're hoping for, because there's going to be these other ones that I've focused on.
And that's the thing. I'll ask both of you guys this. So given what we're doing in the space, both of you have a large presence on social media and Twitter in general. How many times a week or in a day do you get someone that messages you and says, hey, I'd really love for you to join my league, Cody, right? And then you're you feel bad saying no, and then you go from there, and then before you know it, you have 17 drafts coming up right at 11 o'clock tonight, and you have to learn to say no. That's okay.
100%. Yeah, you can't fantasy football is supposed to be fun, and when it becomes a chore, then you've gone too far, right? And that's it. You should bring value to the league. You should leagues are great because of the people that are in them, right? because I love talking with the leagues that I'm in. You know, it gives you an opportunity to talk a little shit and do all that. And like, it's fun. It's a good time. And that's what fantasy football should be. So I agree with you, Chris, 100%. When you get the guys that are just in too many leagues or they're not involved, like everybody hates the guy that like he drafts his team and then he sets his lineup, but then he goes ghost.
Yeah.
Nobody
it's like
wants
I've noticed people. I don't have anybody specific in mind. I don't think I'd call them out if I did, but people wear that like a badge of honor. Like I did see a guy post recently those best ball contests on the underdog, I think it's called. I just entered my 1,000th best ball contest. What do you think? I mean, it's
luckily with best ball, you don't actually make any trades.
You set it and you actually do set it.
You do set it and forget it, but still 1,000 is absurd.
Absolutely.
Like 1,000 is absurd. I can't imagine doing 100 best ball contests. Frankly, it's tough to imagine doing 10. That's why I'm only doing one, which is the Lateral's best ball league that we have going on. We just finished up our, I think, 3-week-long slow draft. It's going to be a wild one. Herms, my co-founder, my partner in crime over at the Lateral, he came up with the scoring system, and like it's super flex. There's 2 kickers that you start. Kickers like genuinely matter. Team DSTs are involved. Like it's tight end premium. It is genuinely nuts, and
it sounds interesting.
I can't wait to see how it goes.
I was lucky enough to I co-host on Friday, Julian, you know, the point after True North and all that.
Oh yeah,
Herms was on last Friday, and we didn't talk about it in detail. He kind of glanced over it, but it sounded interesting, and it's still kind of piquing my interest here. 2 kickers, DST.
Yeah, it's definitely his brainchild. Like he's like, I don't hate kickers, but I hate how kicker scoring is done. So let's see if I can't fix that. Like, I think really the goal of this league is to see, like, can we get a little bit wacky, but also, like, is there a way where we can kind of fix the scoring? And at the end of the day, like, we'll feel, oh, like the best players actually did get represented in the final, like, rankings at the end of the season. Speaking of rankings is definitely a thing you know plenty about. It's one of your areas of expertise. How do you go about creating your rankings?
Well, I got nothing, you know, profound or, you know, that's going to set the world on fire here, but I take in as much information as I can. Like, I don't know if you noticed, I just published my top 250, I believe Tuesday, something along those lines. And I wanted to wait till after the draft, you know, see where these guys go, let each kid get to their facility, maybe get a week's worth of practice in to see what's going on. Because again, I don't judge anybody else, but it doesn't seem fun to me, those people that, you know, every minute of every day, they're always adjusting and updating their rankings. I want to do it maybe 3 or 4 times before the season. Once the season starts, obviously, you know, you're tweaking and doing that during the week leading up to the, you know, whatever week it is. But as it stands right now, I feel like it's counterproductive to always be tweaking. You know, that's number one of my big rules, especially on setting your weekly lineup or in DFS lineups. If you tweak, you're going to talk yourself out of a good point play, something along those lines. Oh, I should have played him, you know, always second guessing yourself. So when I rank, it's nothing crazy. Obviously, I crunch numbers. You can talk about that till the cows come home. Everybody does that as well. But you have to look at all those little nuances, camp battles, things along those lines. And again, you know, it's May 20th. It's almost 10:30 Eastern time. I know, I'd like to think none of us know a dang thing right now. Nothing has really happened. The rookies have met and they're going from there. So all I have right now to base this coming season's rankings are from last year, averages. What can I realistically expect from Derrick Henry? What realistically, where would we put, you know, so just things like that. As it stands right now, I'll tell you right now, hand to the sky, I did all my rankings top 250 from my gut, just how I felt at that moment in time. And I'll let that sit and I'll let that simmer and I'll update again in a month or maybe in the summertime. And then I'll really set it in stone. I'll really hammer it home like a week to 10 days before the season starts. That's when it gets serious. Right now, it's all for fun and games. Again, we don't know anything. It's the middle of May.
Sure. No, I totally agree. And in fact, that's like part of why I've got this thing called the Accountability Bible. It's my pinned tweet over at my Twitter page. And basically it's like my way of going, like, the off season is long and you're putting out content constantly. I want to be like kind of keeping my receipts as to like what I do put out. So like one thing that I've got to update actually from this past week is went over, did a spot with Fantasy Affair, and I said that Tyler Boyd should be a lock for a top 25 wide receiver. So I need to now go and enter that in because I want to make sure that like, yes, I don't have like my full rankings out, but like that's something I laid a claim to. And like if I'm wrong or if something comes out where I need to adjust it, I'll go back in and I'll go like, hey, what I originally said, it's still here. That's not going away. But here's this new information. So you should definitely focus on this because the thing that's above it, that's now old news. You should not keep paying attention to that. Is there any particular numbers, though? I know we talked about how, like, you know, there's so many numbers you can crunch, so many things you can look at. Is there anything you found as you go about creating your rankings over the years that, like, really stands out to you as a stat? Maybe it's, like, a particular stat for a particular position where you're just like, I've really found that this leads to solid performance.
Well, this one is for all positions, you know, snap percentages. If you're not on the field, you're not going to accrue any points. If you're not on the field, you're not going to go, you know, you're not going to do anything. I know quick story, last season in my DFS article, you know, bottom of the barrel, it was the cheapest plays. It was it. Like, you can't afford Travis Kelce and this stuff. And I would get so many questions. People were, you know, yelling at me. Why do you keep having Kyle Rudolph in your mentioning, like, featured in your bottom of the barrel article? He doesn't get any play. Well, he's on the field 89 to 93% of the time. Something good is bound to happen because, again, fantasy football, we're just looking for, you know, the littlest advantage, and we're going to run from it. So it's snap percentages. If you're not on the field, then what's the point? My secondary one would be DVP, you know, defensive player versus whatever, you know, and a big one is for, you know, wide receivers. Who are they going to line up against as the nickel cornerback, the safety, the strong safety? What are they doing, you know, on defense with their blitz packages, timing from the quarterback to the running back, things along those lines? Those are two big ones for me. And to be fair, I get a lot of what I need just from those two things from a DFS perspective. But from a seasonal perspective, again, it's on field percentage, it's roster depth. I mean, again, nothing profound here, but it's things people glance over, especially, you know, the last 6 months, you know, tail end of last season to now. Everybody I've noticed, they like to throw out these buzzwords, you know, all these football buzzwords. And sometimes I don't even think people know what they're talking about. But when you strip it away, all you really need to get to is the meat and potatoes of football on the field, DVP, where you are on the depth chart. And it's, to me, I find that the easiest.
That's definitely sound logic. It's, you know, it's one of those things, like, it's a lot easier to win if you score. It's a lot easier to score if you're on the field. Yeah. And I'd say you definitely, well, you nailed it there.
There's been plenty of time. Again, I think I mentioned this, you know, 15, 20 minutes ago where, you know, if we're always tweaking, we're going to talk ourselves out of a should-be good play. Same thing. I'm not saying anything that I haven't done before, all the mistakes that I've made, you know, holding myself accountable for you here this evening. But there's been plenty of times where I had, you know, two sets of numbers for the same player. And when you look at it, it's like it's a wash, and I'm right back where I started, meaning I just wasted the last hour counting all these numbers when it was unnecessary for what I was looking for from that said player. So too much information, it's information overload, and before you know it, you don't know up from down, you don't know left from right. So I try, and again, I keep it simple, nothing crazy, nothing profound, not lighting the world on fire here tonight.
Honestly, there are worse ideas than that. I know, like, for me personally, like, I find that, like, sometimes a little trigger happy on the waiver wire. And so I think, honestly, this season, I'm going to actively try and, like, scale that back. Not do none, because if you do none, you're not going to win. But, like, be like, okay, you just added J.D. McKissick. Maybe you don't need to drop him for Malcolm Brown the next day just because, like, you saw one good thing about Malcolm Brown.
I hope you didn't drop JD. What do you have? 80 receptions last season? Unbelievable.
I wish I'd picked up JD. That's just me having some wishful thinking, some rose-colored glasses, as it were. All right, but let's get into some group activities here. Little value palooza. I want you, and we're going to start with some dynasty startup. We're going to go into redraft. If we got some time, maybe we'll touch on some rookies. But I want you to give me a player at each position that I give where you think they are guaranteed to exceed, where you think their ADP will be like a week or two before the season starts. Not now, Because like there's guys like Jamar Chase where if you go like, oh, well, Jamar Chase is guaranteed to be a value. He's going at like ADP 85. It's like, yeah, but we know he won't do that come August. So like I want you to kind of use your gut, think where these guys are going to go in August when it's really draft season, and give me some value. So Chris, I'm going to start with you. Dynasty startup, QB, who's your value?
Well, again, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm not going to read this back. Hopefully no one catches this, but it's got to be Kirk Cousins. You know, I can't stand Minnesota Vikings fans. I can't stand people that are all in on Kirk Cousins. And it's not because of the Minnesota city or the people there. It's how much they overvalue Kirk Cousins. Probably talking about 16, 17-year-old kids on Twitter here. But if you look back at what Kirk Cousins did last season, it was unbelievable and nobody talked about it. I forget, maybe
top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was just not even on the radar. Super flex leagues, sure, even 8th or 9th round, but in a super flex, that's like round 25 in a standard scoring or a 1 QB league. So at quarterback, I'd have to say Kirk Cousins. And again, getting little to no traction right now in fantasy football circles and dynasty startup circles. And again, nothing has really changed. You got Cook, you got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, who I could pair him with when we get to wide receivers as a value. Everybody, it's how can I put this without sounding like a jerk? It's kind of what have you done for me lately? And Adam is just ho-hum. He's a damn good wide receiver, and nobody pays attention to that. They want the newest, youngest, shiny, flashy toy. And Adam Thielen, I believe he got the most red zone targets as a wide receiver last season. And that's insane to be paired with a top 10 quarterback with an ADP of what, in the 80s and the 90s, something along those lines.
You can get Kirk pretty cheap. I think it's an excellent pick and possibly like a little under the radar for a dynasty startup because you're really talking about like your QB2 there rather than your QB1. So everyone's like, oh, what's he going to say? Is he going to say like Joe Burrow? Because Joe Burrow is going to be going a little late. But like Kirk Cousins, I like you pulling that one out. Cody, what do you got for me? QB value in a dynasty startup.
And you're exactly talking about value, right? Give me Tua. Give me Tua Tagovailoa. At this point, where he was going last year to where he's going now, his value is dropped off the table. Guess what? The talent is still there. The talent is still there. Not only is the talent still there, they brought in more talent to help him out, right? They brought in Will Fuller V, Notre Dame alum, shout out. They brought in Jalen Waddle. They drafted a tight end, a blocking tight end, granted, but they drafted a tight end to help that offense. They got Tua help. Tua is going to be substantially better next year than he was in his rookie season. Coming off a phenomenal or a fairly devastating injury, didn't have a lot of offseason work. Give the guy a chance. Everybody gave up on him so fast because he wasn't Justin Herbert out of the gate. Fun fact, Justin Herberts are rare, right? It's rare when you get a rookie quarterback who jumps off of the page like that.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why we actually usually look for the sophomore breakout when it comes to a quarterback.
Exactly, and I expect 1 out of 2 this year. Love him.
Have you seen that recent video? I think it was either from this morning or early yesterday of him, running around the cones and in the hula hoops, and they said cut, run, and go, and his footwork looked it was gorgeous.
Oh yeah, and that's something that like it's been there, but it wasn't highlighted last year because he wasn't doing those types of things, right? Like because he was coming off of that injury. So when you see stuff like that, and you like, I know it's like whoa, big off season, like we're watching a guy run against cones, but at the same time, for a guy with an injury history, that is good to see. That is really good to see. I'm excited for him.
I would agree. Like if you are concerned about Tua, it is most likely because of that injury. Like I have some reservations because last year, it didn't look like he had fully recovered from it. So if we see some stuff this offseason where, he's looking pretty mobile, I'm definitely going to be right there with you, probably looking at him as a sophomore breakout candidate. I think it's a great pickup.
To be fair, I think his confidence was shot last season.
Yeah, I would agree.
With Ryan Fitzpatrick there. You're going to start the game this week, Tua, and then at halftime, so constantly pulling him out and putting him in, kind of like what happened to Carson Wentz. They shipped him off. The confidence was at an all-time low. And for a young kid like Tua in his rookie season, you gotta get in the swing of things. You gotta get some sort of confidence up, and then you'll be able. Well, you know what? I feel good. I'm warmed up. Maybe then I'll take it outside. Or the confidence was nil last season.
Definitely agree on that. All right, Cody, let's snake draft this. We're going to go to you to start off the running backs. Who is your value pick at running back for a dynasty startup?
I feel like a lot of people think this guy is like old and like, oh, he's old. He's not quite there. Why have we given up on Zeke?
Ooh.
Like I understand that he hasn't like, oh wow, like he doesn't look like he has 6-pack abs in May, 4 months before week 1. I get it. And a lot of it tends to hate with the world seems to like to shit on the old Cowboys a little bit, but Zeke is good. Zeke was paid and Zeke still has a good offensive line. And I know that the Dallas Cowboys offensive line wasn't great last year, but they were hurt, right? They missed a ton of games from La'el Collins. They missed a ton of games from Zach Martin. Like those are all pro caliber offensive linemen, not just pro bowlers, all pro caliber offensive linemen. So when you have guys like that missing, like, yeah. Oh, and by the way, they could load the box against Andy Dalton. Like I'm a Bengals fan. I watched it for 10 years. People load the box against Andy Dalton. Dak's back. Dak is going to be back. The offense is going to be much more efficient. And I think Zeke still has a couple years ahead of him where you can get some really good value, especially where he's going.
Yeah, I think he will be really interesting again. This is a guy who finished RB10 in what was considered a like brutally disappointing season. Can you imagine like RB10, brutally disappointing? Like, I get it. You probably drafted the guy to be your like RB3 overall candidate, but like still, like you got an RB1 when you tried to pick an RB1. I think there were things. Yeah. And if his value continues to grow because his ADP continues to slide, which like that's what the buzz kind of is, I 1,000% agree. All right, Chris, who you got for me at running back?
One, I got two. The first one I'll just brush over. Myles Gaskin. I mean, I love that thing there. I mean, he should be the guy there, for the short time or even long term, whatever. But it's Austin Eckler. Nobody's talking about Austin Eckler. He's only 26. I found him, kind of like in third rounds of mock startups or mock even redrafts, whatever. I know this is for dynasty startups, but Austin Eckler to me, again, I have him projected at probably 75 catches, 75 to 80, and that might be on the low side. 220-ish carries, another 900 yards, maybe 1,000, and then 800 receiving yards. So you're looking at 1,800 all-purpose yards and a handful of touchdowns, probably 8 to 9 touchdowns. And given the fact where he's going, nobody's talking about him. Another guy, and if you notice, especially, I know, fantasy football, and social media, it's just a really small portion. We think that
it's an echo chamber.
Yeah, we all think that Twitter is the end all be all. Like there's millions of other people on other platforms or just in their basements, whatever. But on social media, nobody's talking about Austin Eckler. And why? Well, because Cam Akers, young and shiny, DeAndre Swift, young and shiny, or even Aaron Jones in Green Bay is in a fantastic spot. They paid him. We're expecting big things out of him in Green Bay. But here is Austin Eckler coming off of last season where he picked up the pace at the end there after tearing his groin completely off the bone or something awful like that. But bad. To me, yeah. But he came back very fast. He was in videos working out. And so to me, he's a high character guy, high motor guy. You can count on him, rain, shine, anything. You can count on Austin Eckler. And so give me Eck, in the second or third round here.
Love it. In fact, like, again, I know we're talking about dynasty, but like I'm in a keeper league where I have Eckler on my roster. And it's like, I've got some wide receiver talent. I'd love to hold on. And I'm honestly right now leaning towards not keeping Eckler because his value is so good right now. I think I can get him with my first round pick after my keepers. And it's just like, then I'll have two really talented wide receivers and Austin Eckler, and he's an RB1 guy. So like, again, I love that pick.
Sorry to cut you off here, but if I look around, especially on my team, my fantasy team, I added Austin Eckler in a trade for next to nothing. I gave the guy Darnell Mooney and a third round pick in this year's rookie draft, which was Dynamic Brown.
Can we join your league?
I was going to say that's
absurd.
Get in, pal.
Even at value, that's absurd.
It's full IDP too. It's a bunch of dinosaurs. This league has been going for 25 years. Guys in in their 60s, 70s. One guy passed away last season. So these guys are really set in their way, so that they're not dialed in like we are, let's say, or I am, whatever. Sure. So Mooney, and I think it was a second round pick because the guy really wanted Amari Rodgers or Dynami Brown, something like that. But again, one question to you guys, and we should start this if not, is there a website we can go to and see, you type in a player and it'll show you the recent trades, not even in your own league, just like a database where you type in Austin Eckler and it'll say, Cody in Indianapolis or Notre Dame's campus just received him and he sent, Mooney in a second round pick. That would be good research for articles, for tweets, things along those lines.
Don't hold me to it. Sleeper actually, I think, has a feed like that. So again, you'll only be looking at sleeper trades, but that's given how much dynasty happens on sleeper, like it's definitely a valuable resource there. I think they do have a feed for that, but that's a great point. I think one that often gets looked over. Let's see what wide receiver you think might be getting looked over, though. Who's your value at wide receiver for a dynasty startup, Chris?
Bobby Trees, Robert Woods in LA. I mean, it's ridiculous. Another guy who I'll be honest with you, I just swept him under the rug too until I started to do my top 250 dynasty last weekend. And then I was looking around where I had him and I said, this is insane. Looking at his projections from last year, looking at what I'm expecting him to do this coming season, it was unbelievable. And so again, I'm accusing myself or calling myself out for having Robert Woods too low. I think I had him 27th, 30th, something like that. And I said, Chris, you can't publish this dog crap. You're going to get eaten alive. So I had to really sit down and look at it again. And I moved him up just shy of the top 15. He's right under Cooper and DJ Moore, but at the Rams, they got Stafford. Both those receivers, Kupp and Robert Woods with Stafford, should just go absolutely nuts. Cooper Kupp is a PPR guy, and all that Robert Woods does too is catch passes. And again, nobody is talking about him because the MO for me this evening is young, shiny things. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Everybody loves Terry McLaurin now that they have Ryan Fitzpatrick there as a placeholder. So I to be honest with you, I could have went Robert Woods or Keenan Allen. And I know if we want to get out of here before midnight, I'll just brush right past Keenan Allen. So to me, it's Robert Woods. Keenan Allen is a close second.
No, I have to say Keenan Allen, definitely a good choice. Let's see if it's Cody's choice, though. Cody, who you got? Wide receiver value.
It's not, but it's similar. It's on the West Coast. If I were to tell you, like, hey, the Seahawks wide receiver that had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, you're going to be like, oh, DK Metcalf? I'm going to be like, no, Tyler Lockett. You can get substantially later. Substantially later. And it's not even close. And everybody's like, oh, well, he's old. The dude's 28. Like, the guy's 1 year older than Mike Evans, right? Like, it's not like he is some dinosaur.
And he recently got paid, if I recall, too. So we're expecting him to be an integral part of that franchise.
Right. And like, I don't think his quarterback situation is going to change for a while. I think Russell Wilson tends to be pretty good at throwing the football. So
pretty good at quarterback, sure.
Yeah.
Like, why are we so low on Tyler Lockett? I think it's almost kind of the you picture him next to DK Metcalf and you just see how much of a freak DK is. And you're like, oh, well, Tyler Lockett's not 6'4", 235 pounds of freak. Yeah, but he's still a really damn good wide receiver. So give me all the shares of Tyler Lockett. Love him.
I think it's probably the roller coaster that you have to go through when you have Tyler Lockett on your team, because he'll have like weeks where he is literally the best wide receiver in fantasy and weeks where it's like, did he even show up? It's not really his fault. It's not like he's, having these bad weeks because he's dropping a ton of balls. It's because of targets. But I would agree that, like, given how his value, I think, has plummeted this offseason because of that narrative, he's now turning into a value for me for sure. So I 1,000% agree with that assessment. Let's see if I agree with your call at tight end, though. Who you got for me, Cody?
Out of Notre Dame, man. Give me Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet.
All right. Look,
love it.
Look, I know Detroit, Chris. All right. Give me the Detroit DC. I understand why this Bears pick might be a little hard. But that being said, you said it yourself, it comes down to snaps. If Cole Kmet can out-snap Jimmy Graham, and I think he has the talent to do it, with Justin Fields and what should be a substantially better offense, I think there's a lot of value there and he's a guy that, like, he isn't one of those top tier tight ends. So he's not going super early. I would much rather throw a dart on a guy like Cole Kmet than get one of those like meh tight ends in that like 7 to 8 range and not really feel exciting about it. And the guy's young. He was a rookie last year.
Yeah.
Tight ends take a while to develop. So
Correct.
give me Cole Kmet. Love it.
Yeah, I love it too, especially because if you look at the second half of the season, he's like getting 6 to 7 to 8 targets a game a lot of the time. I think he had still one off week during that time, but like he was we were talking about on waiver wire columns for redraft last season, 100%. Chris,
are we even confident that Jimmy Graham is going to be on the team come the season? I think he's going to be cut, but that's just me.
I think we're annoyingly confident that he'll be. It feels like they're going to run it back with him, even though it would make a lot of sense for them not to. But who knows? Honestly, now that they have Justin Fields, I think Matt Nagy's job is a little more secure. And if my job's a little more secure, I'm much more willing to move on from Jimmy Graham.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you might be onto something there.
His value would only go up, right? Yeah. Like this is a guy that would only become more valuable. So, I mean, especially if you have any dynasty drafts going on now, like love me some Cole Kmet. I'm getting a lot of shares of. I have 2 or 3 dynasty leagues with him now.
The lateral definitely stands Cole Kmet, so we're with you there as well. Chris, who you got for us?
Kmet was my guy, but I'm able to I'm a professional when it comes to podcasting guest spots, so I'm able to change on the fly here. The first guy that I thought of, and I said, I'll give you the rationale and then I'll drop his name. You tell me. So Mike Gesicki, right? He's just outside of the top 10 right now. I believe I have him at tight end 11. He's right outside in favor of Noah Fant here. But again, he's starting to pick up some pace in terms of people talking about him and saying he is a sleeper. So if we all say player A is a sleeper, then does that make player A a sleeper anymore? No, everybody's in the know. You've shined the light on it. But so to me, I want to go to New England. You have Hunter Henry there now, and you have Jonnu Smith. And again, everybody's, freaking out. Both guys, Bill spent up, and both guys are in New England. So with them both being there, they kind of cancel each other out. It's just, like 2 negatives and a positive. It cancels each other out in algebra, if I'm not mistaken. But Jonnu Smith in that offense with the way they run their tight end sets, 2 tight ends, they've done it, since the beginning of time, if I remember correctly. And Jonnu he's talk about an athletic freak. We've seen him in the gym where he's like this and his weights. I mean, the guy is just chiseled out of stone or granite, as they say. I think that offensive coordinator and what they do there, they're going to get creative and they're going to get him in a lot of different ways, running different routes, not just ground and pound right up the middle or cutting across the field here. So I fully expect a big season out of Jonnu Smith. And as it stands right now, he's when it comes to tight end, right? So Jonnu, I have him like tight end 12 or tight end 13, which if that was a receiver or running back, how could that player be of value? They're
Sure.
so high. They're top 12, top 15 there. But when it comes to tight ends, Cody hit the home run right at the beginning of the broadcast. Tight end falls off a cliff after pick 5. After tight end 5 overall, there's nothing left. So it's up to us to kind of do our due diligence and look into these guys. And we can what I love about that is, we can kind of who's your guy at tight end. I can manufacture my own given, my notes and everything that's going on. And I think right here in front of you boys, I've talked myself into being a Jonnu Smith guy here. So to me, it's Jonnu Smith, massive value. People think that they canceled each other out. As I said, not much is going to go on. So use that to your advantage.
Okay. I like it a lot. I think I'm with you because it's dynasty. I think in redraft, I'm more concerned about Jonnu because you only get the 17 games now to get your call right. And so like they haven't used the twin tight end system as much lately because they haven't had good tight ends. But that means that the system they've been running lately doesn't really give the appropriate market share to the tight end. You've got Henry and Jonnu. Like, who's going to be the better blocker? Will they maybe lean on one of them a little as a blocker? If you follow the money similar, et cetera, et cetera. But like in Dynasty, if you're getting this guy at a value and it turns out that he's the one that's like the one they really hammer on, then you've hit it big because Belichick certainly historically has used the tight end. So like in redraft, like, do I want to take that gamble? Maybe, maybe not. It depends where he ultimately falls. But in Dynasty, I love it because I could see like if you hit on it this year, then it's going to pay dividends for years to come. And if you don't, you can always pivot to something else because tight end, again, it's like those top 5 guys everyone really locks into. Everyone else you're flexible.
If I can get back on your good side real quick, I apologize for the Jonnu Smith take.
No, I love it.
Cody stole Cole Kmet out from under me.
I genuinely love the Jonnu pick.
My initial reaction was Adam Troutman in New Orleans, but if you notice, if you're plugged in to social media lately,
anymore.
Yeah, because everybody's talking about him, I figured, well, that's low hanging fruit. That would be easy, but then that would be lazy of me.
I much prefer what you did. I prefer what you did.
I could pull Jonnu Smith out of a hat right now and really, really polish him up.
And especially because you've talked me into him a little more than I was when you started your piece on him. Like, I have to say, you got me like thinking about it. It's like, oh yeah, if I can get him in a value, it's dynasty, and maybe they'll like really invest. Yeah, okay, I can see it.
If I remember correct, this time last year, maybe August, somewhere around that line, that's when Jonnu was through the roof in terms of value. Like, people were talking about taking Jonnu over some like top 15, top 20 running backs or top 20 wide receivers, because that's how in love they were with him because of that gym shot. And so why, you have to ask yourself, well, why was it, what happened then, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, kind of saying here. And we know why. He off and on the field last season, injuries and stuff. Well, the talent and the height and the build doesn't just go away overnight. So to me, Jonnu Smith is right back, in the forefront in my mind.
Yeah, again, it's like I definitely love that compared to Troutman. Troutman, absolutely low hanging fruit, or I guess high jumping fish.
You deserve better. I didn't want to.
Something along those lines. Well, let's see if you can keep the streak of giving me better alive. Redraft. We're going to switch to that now. Who's a QB value at redraft for you?
Oh, geez. I would say probably just off the top of my head, Matthew Stafford, right? And it has nothing to do with where I was born, where I live, and my love for the Detroit Lions. But Stafford going to LA, they're ready to win right now, right? They after the addition of Stafford, they're fully in. They've cannonballed into the win now pool here, and he's going to give that division all it can handle. To me personally, that divisional race, the NFC West out there, is going to be one of the more spectacular, seasons and races all year. So Matthew Stafford going there with you have to hit your own head, because it's an embarrassment of riches with Robert Woods, as I said, Kupp, Akers, who probably will get the ball 20 times a game, just carries there. So to me, it's Matthew Stafford. Everybody, when he was in Detroit, everybody kind of toed the line with him. Yeah, he's good, but nobody really, went all in on him one way or another. There was never, I'm a big Stafford guy, or I hate Stafford guy. He was like the cool guy in high school where everybody got along with, and Stafford, he's cool. I could do with him or without him. No big deal. And right now, I think you need to grab Stafford. It's going to be an unbelievably magical season, especially with him and McVay, and given what they have on the field in front of him. So I wish Stafford the best. He was a fantastic man in the city of Detroit here. So Stafford to the Super Bowl would be fantastic.
Well, you had me up until Stafford to the Super Bowl. As a Niners fan, I certainly can't tolerate such talk, but I do like Stafford. I do think he's got a lot of potential there. And honestly, I liked him in Detroit. Like last season, coming into this season, I considered him as a top 5 QB, like being at like that QB 5 spot, not like the spots above that, because he doesn't have the legs, but that sheer amount of passing volume. We saw borderline top 5 play from him, not last year, but the year before when he was healthy. It'd be really interesting to see what he does on objectively a more complete, a more competitive team. No offense, Chris. Again,
no. I mean, it's not even a comparison. You're comparing the Lions to the the current Lions to the current Rams. Yeah. It's not even a comparison. It's apples and oranges.
Well, we're going to stick to apples and apples. Cody, give me a QB to compare against what Chris is throwing at me.
I can't, but it's kind of mind-boggling that this guy's a value to me. Within the last 3 years, he has led the league in passing yards, led the league in touchdowns. He's objectively got one of the best coaches in football, and he's going undrafted. Jameis Winston is somebody that I am loving to stack, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. But in 1 quarterback leagues, there is an off chance that I just punt the quarterback position and then draft Jameis. Because if he wins that starting job, and I predict that he will, and I know that, Lateral and I talked earlier about
His
Taysom
dad
Hill being the love
running the
child
team.
of Sean Payton. But man, the arm talent is absolutely there. We forget we haven't seen Jameis Winston throw outside of post LASIK. In his time with the Saints, every single ball that he has thrown has ended up in a touchdown. So, in all seriousness, that is a team that should have some passing volume. They do have some good weapons in Traquan Smith and Michael Thomas. They have Alvin Kamara. I am a believer in the fact that if Jameis Winston gets volume, Jameis Winston can put up points. Yeah, I'll turn the ball over a little bit. That's fine. Like, I don't need him to win football games. I need him to put up fantasy points. And I think he can absolutely do that. And you're getting him for free. He's absolutely 100% free.
I think that is really the important point. Again, like, I have my own thoughts on, like, I agree with you. It should be Jameis, but like, Sean Payton loves his kid. And since he's the coach, he gets to make the roster decisions. Just, again, the only logical explanation for why Taysom Hill's been a starting quarterback in the NFL. Again, he should start over me, but not over Jameis Winston. Like, let's be honest here. I think the other thing that gets a little overlooked with New Orleans thing is, like, that team could really be weaker this year. That defense has lost some pieces. Mm-hmm. That offense no longer has Drew Brees, and like Jameis Winston, good, but makes some mistakes. He'll be great for fantasy, maybe less so from a real world perspective. And the rest of the division's getting better. Tampa's running it back. They're in a second year of that Arian system with Brady under center, which should mean that they get better. And honestly, depending on his ADP, Brady could be that value in redraft. You know, that's an interesting one to think about. Atlanta should be better. It'd be tough for them to be worse. And I think Carolina gets better. So you can see a lot of negative game script for Jameis Winston, who airs the ball out a ton. So I love that pick, especially because his ADP really could be dirt cheap. Running back, you got someone equally diamond in the rough for me, or are we going a little more chalk here?
Okay, so this may come off as a homer pick because I am a massive Bengals fan. But that being said,
you're right.
I'm all in on Joe Mixon. And the reason being is everybody is talking about how he didn't look great last year. Like, he was objectively, he was not good in the games that he played, and he only played 6 games. I get that. But volume is king, especially when it comes to running backs. Giovanni Bernard is gone. Joe Mixon played greater than 75% of the snaps in every game that he played except for 2. Those 2 games, a lot of negative game script. They were down big. Giovanni Bernard came in for a lot of passing down work. They don't have that anymore. And the guy behind him is not good at, like, he is not a passing down back. It's the back from Oklahoma. And I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, but he has a phenomenal beard, which is important for a running back. But Joe Mixon had 18 red zone carries in 6 games last year. Where are you going to find that volume anywhere else? There's not a chance. And the offensive line absolutely got better, right? They drafted Jackson Carman. He should be their starting right guard. They had Quentin Spain start for them last year. He was signed to the team week 6. He didn't even start. He didn't have any camp. He had nothing, and he was their starting guard, right? He should have a full year of camp, should objectively be better. Jonah Williams, if healthy, is a good left tackle. Their center, Trey Hopkins, was their best offensive lineman last year. And then they signed Riley Reid from the Vikings, who had a great year for Minnesota. Their offensive line got better. And I don't know if you saw if you follow Joe Mixon on Twitter, that this is definitely just a Bengals niche thing, but he was super ecstatic from the signing of Joe Pollock, their offensive line coach. They brought him back when Joe Mixon had Frank Pollock. He had 2.2 yards per carry before contact. After Frank Pollock left, he had 0.6.
Ooh,
there's a massive difference with how good of a offensive line coach Frank Pollock is. That offensive line should be better and give me all the volume. There's nobody on that roster who should even compete with Joe Mixon for touches.
Yeah, P. Ryan and Puka are not exactly scaring me in that.
P. Ryan, that's who it was. I couldn't think. I was like, man, he's got a great beard. I can't think of the name.
Yeah,
Shout out to Chris Evans. I believe they undrafted free agent kid out of Michigan. Yes. I know you guys were talking about college football. I'm a huge college football too, and I support the University of Michigan. I know you and I would bump heads as a Notre Dame fan, as a Michigan fan, but shout out to Chris Evans. Kid has what it takes to not be an RB1, but he can help move something along there in Cincinnati.
I agree.
Well, who's another RB? Let's see. Chris, I believe you're up. What's the pick?
This one's super easy for me. I look down at the list and my notes in front of me. There's like 15 guys I could talk about, but to me, I've always had a soft spot for Chris Carson in Seattle here. So again, if you look at, I'll give you the negatives first, and then we'll go from there. I think he's yet to play more than 14 games in a season. He missed 6 full games last year, only carried the ball 140 times. But some of the positives, last year, he averaged a career high in targets, 3.8 targets a game here. And fully healthy, I'd like to think, a new contract. He doesn't have to worry about that nonsense. I don't know how long it is. I think it's 2, maybe 3 years, something along those lines. But I'm expecting Carson to get 225-ish plus carries this coming season. Over 1,000 yards, barely, maybe 1,100, something along those lines. But again, he's their goal line back too. So you could see upwards of 10 touchdowns, 10, 11, maybe 12 touchdowns. So you're telling me, a 220-ish carry guy, nothing set in stone, but more than likely he'll get over the 1,000-yard rushing mark, and he'll score 10 times, and he'll probably catch dang near close to 40 footballs this coming season. Give me Chris Carson, because if you look at his ADP now, last I look, it's in the early to mid 3rd round, which is perfect. I think that's perfect for him. Not too high, not too low, but if it's all in the eye of the beholder, and me as the beholder, if I'm looking at Chris Carson with such high expectations, then in the beginning or the middle of the 3rd round, that presents value. So give me Chris Carson.
No, I would agree. He's a guy who gets a lot done with very little opportunity.
I think we say this about Chris Carson every year, and it's just amazing how, like, as a fantasy football playing community, we just, like, every year it's like, hey, like, I think Chris Carson could have some value, and every year he does pretty well. And then the next year it's, hey, Chris Carson still has some good value. So Chris, I was between him and Joe Mixon, so I am glad that I picked Joe, because I would have stole your guy 2 times in a row. Love to see
that's it. All right.
Hey, well, great minds think alike. Great minds think alike.
Let's see if Chris can't snipe you here. Wide receiver. Who you got for me?
In redraft leagues, I don't think that it could be any easier than Brandon Cooks in Houston. Again, another guy, self-admittedly, have had no feelings on, nothing DFS, never owned him in seasonal formats. So again, if much like any human beings, we get kind of selfish. If he's not in my circle or anywhere around where I am, just doesn't exist, kind of thing, like, ex-girlfriend or an old job. It never happened. It didn't exist. So to me, Brandon Cooks was he never existed. And all he did last season, he put up almost 1,200 yards. I think it was 1,160, 150, something like that. Scored 6 times, averaged, 13 or 14 yards a reception. And people just go, man on the street, kind of like the Tonight Show. They just go, who's the president of the United States? And they give these weird off answer. Ask people, how good has Brandon Cooks been the last few seasons? I guarantee you the most commented player would be, oh, he's always injured, I don't want nothing to do with him. That's not true. The kid plays on the field. He's missed, I think, in the last 2 I don't want to box myself in here. In the last 2 seasons, I don't think he's missed more than 3 or 4 games. So again, last year caught 81 balls on 119 targets, I believe it was. And here we are, put out, like, in PPR scoring formats, I think he put up 230 total points, and it's just going to be more of the same this season. I actually have him for basically the same exact projections as last year: 79, 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 6 or 7 touchdowns again. And if you look at his ADP, he's buried. Nobody cares about him. You could get Brandon Cooks in, call me crazy. Again, you wanted just off the cuff here. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you could probably get Brandon Cooks in the 7th or 8th round. That's criminal for a guy that could easily pop off for 1,200 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns. So at his price, you're drafting your wide receiver 3s and 4 there. So to draft Brandon Cooks in the 6th, 7th round and in the 8th round, that blows my mind. Give me Brandon Cooks in redraft formats.
Yeah, and I'll even double down on that. Even if Deshaun is guaranteed to be the quarterback this season, I guarantee you Brandon Cooks will still ultimately end up being a value, because he always is. It's a great pick. I absolutely love it. Cody, let's see if you can impress me just as much with your wide receiver. Who you got?
Well, Chris, you did it. You did it. We put you up to the challenge, and you took my guy. So
we're even now. We're even.
You love to see it. But
I should have noticed. You looked, when I said Cooks, you looked so scared. I was like, I took his guy from him. Oh.
Yep, dead in the eyes, dead in the eyes. You hate to see it, but I did my homework and I brought more than one. And I'm gonna 49ers fans, like that quarterback room is going to be better this year. Shanahan offense, they manufacture touches. Brandon Ayuk played 12 games last year. In those 12 games, he scored 13 plus PPR points, 8 of the 12 games. That's phenomenal for a rookie, right? Like he didn't get
wide receiver
touches out of the jump.
Wide receiver 17 in PPR in terms of points per game.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So obviously it is early. It's early, but I saw like when I did my little ADP research right now, he's going like wide receiver 30-ish range. Give me all of the Brandon Ayuk. And that offense is going to be so much more exciting and electric and efficient this year because they are going to have, regardless of who plays quarterback, if it's Jimmy G or if it's Trey Lance, any consistency is going to improve that quarterback room. I am in love with Brandon Ayuk. I hope that I draft him in every league that I'm in because, man, is he fun to watch jump over people and score some points for the old 49ers. So I love it. Love me some Brandon Cooks.
You clearly, you got me visibly excited. I love Brandon Ayuk. I think I was completely out of love with him the minute we drafted him because I was still hurt that we didn't draft Jerry Jeudy. Like I really thought we were going to get Jerry Jeudy, and then we didn't get Jerry Jeudy. And I'm like, well, I'm crushed for the rest of the evening. And then I think like you can check with Herms. I think it was like literally a day or two later. I'm like, I've really done some research, and I think I'm 100% in on this guy. I love him. Picked him up in some dynasty startups, and then like to see him go off, to see him hurdle that guy in that Eagles game. I woke up the entire apartment complex with that one. Trust me. Oh,
Malcolm, let me ask you. I'll ask both of you guys this. So you said you wanted Jerry Jeudy. We know he's on Denver, and the first and foremost comment there people say is crowded wide receiver room. They don't trust Lock. Teddy's there. They're going to get Aaron Rodgers. But if you took Brandon Ayuk, I'll do it right now. Take Ayuk, and I'll move him to Denver, and I'll give you Jerry Jeudy. Which one would you still prefer, Ayuk over Jeudy, or would it be Jeudy now?
I really love Brandon Ayuk, but objectively, Jerry Jeudy is a bit more talented. I have to be honest there. It's like, I don't think they're super far off, but I think objectively, Jerry Jeudy is still like a little more talented. And so I'd still probably prefer him, but I'm not complaining about what we have.
Yeah, all I was getting at is if you take one good young kid wide receiver in the position, where you put him, what team and who's around him, that you'd be lying to yourself if you said that didn't kind of, sway your opinion here. So if you took Ayuk and put him in Denver, he'd probably, I don't want to say Denver is an abyss, but it's kind of like, everything goes right there, not right now in Denver. There's just so many moving parts there.
Yeah, it'll be curious. Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, positioning and location matters so much in the league. And I listened to a podcast today with Juju Smith-Schuster talking about him returning to the Steelers. And that was something that he's like, that absolutely factors into free agency decisions. And it should absolutely factor into how we make fantasy football decisions because where you end up matters. An offense with Kyle Shanahan at the helm is substantially different than other offenses in the NFL. An offense with like a poor defense on the back end where you can score a ton of points is good. The 49ers have an incredible defense, but like the Broncos have what is objectively the worst like setup for fantasy production is they want to keep you to low scoring games, play phenomenal defense, and then beat you by like 17-14. That's not what you want from a fantasy perspective. And I love Jerry Jeudy had 900 yards last year. Like that by no means is like Jerry Jeudy a bad wide receiver. People think of him as a disappointment because he only had 3 touchdowns. Like that, I think that gets kind of overshadowed a little bit, but he's good, man. He is talented. I would love to see him with a legitimate quarterback. I'm not a big fan of
his raw targets were actually, I think he got over 100 targets last year. So like he's definitely someone, I think either of those 2 Broncos wide receivers could be at least slight value. So they're definitely guys I have an eye on because like people forgot about Cortland Sutton. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be really curious to see like what happens with his ADP as we get closer and closer to draft season. Cody, hit me with a tight end here. Who you got?
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to have to go back to the NFC North again. Robert Tonyan finished last year as tight end 4 and he's currently being valued at like tight end 9-ish. Man, we're on the same page, my guy.
I'm able to stick and move here. I don't want to take away your Tanyan spotlight.
But what changed in Green Bay that would change his outlook? Same quarterback, same wide receivers, same running back, same offensive line, same coach. What changed, right? He finished as tight end 4. And I understand that like touchdown regression is very much a thing that people love to holler about. The Packers are going to score touchdowns, right? Like it is what it is. They're a good football team. They're going to score touchdowns. I think Tanyan can be a value at 9. I don't think he's going to put up. Do not expect him to be a Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, but for tight end 9, he can absolutely be a value. I like that pick there.
Yep, I do too. I think, like, again, the big concerns with Tanyan would be like some TD regression. He caught just about every ball that was thrown to him, but again, like he also caught just about every ball that was thrown to him. Like we should view that probably as a positive, not a negative. And then, if Rodgers goes, then like all bets are off. But for now, we're assuming he's going to stick around. So 1,000% agree with the pick, Cody. It's a good one. So, Chris, who you got? Cody's like getting you with the snipe.
No, I'm going to stay. I'm glad he mentioned Tanyan because I didn't have a good of a pitch as he did for Tanyan. I'm going to go. I'm staying in the NFC. I'm going to go to the East. The Washington football team's tight end, Logan Thomas. Now, if you look at what he did last season, we all know, right? Breakout. It was fantastic. In a way, it was kind of quarterback proof. They mixed and matched quarterbacks kind of all season. I believe they went through 3 at one place in time here. So Tanyan right now, Tanyan I have 9 as my tight end 9. I have Logan Thomas 2 spots higher at tight end 7 here. And again, kind of going off the premise of what has changed in Green Bay, nothing. What has changed in Washington? A little bit. A lot. Well, I don't know. It's up to you here. But with Ryan Fitzpatrick in there, we talked about Winston and guys airing it out. Ryan Fitzpatrick, that's what he does. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. They have a young up and coming running back in Antonio Gibson, who is going to help the cause tremendously. Terry, Curtis Samuel, who's going to be that gadget guy in the middle of the field, taking away coverage from Logan Thomas on the outside or lined up on the opposite side, cutting in across each other, pick plays, whatever. So not talking X and O's here, but Logan Thomas to me is a very big value in redraft leagues. If you look at what his ADP is now, unless I'm off in space, it looks like it's the 8th rounder. So mid to late 8th round here. And that's fine. Again, I've never been one to, grab a tight end early on. Again, we know that thing. If you miss out on the top 3 or the top 4, you wait. If I'm waiting, I'm going to wait on purpose just for Logan Thomas, or wait another round or 2 after that and grab Tanyan. So either one of those you can't miss.
I love it. I love it a lot. I think you guys actually picked on 2 great values because they're 2 guys that were unexpected to have their breakouts that they had last season. Like I think one was tight end 3, one was tight end 4, and it'll be really interesting to see if they can repeat the experience. And at their current ADP, if they do, you've come out way ahead. So
100%.
Love both the picks here. All right, it's for your draft. So let's get a little weird. Let's get a DST sleeper. I'm going to make it difficult for you, potentially. I trust both of you guys. I think you'll nail this. Chris, going to start with you. What is your DST value pick?
My DST value pick would probably be the Indianapolis Colts. They're as it stands right now, in most people's rankings, they're 9th, 10th, and that's on the high side, right? I'm not going to name other teams that I could have talked about because Cody's still left to go here. But Indianapolis to me is a team that is going to be playing with the lead, I'd like to think, right? They're going to get up, if Carson Wentz can find that magic, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, all those guys. And so the defense isn't really going to be asked to do a lot. And you have what I consider one of the best, if not the best coverage linebackers, just sideline to sideline linebackers in the maniac, Darius Leonard. The guy just jumps off the page to you. I just saw like a 20, 30-minute special on him this morning when I was having coffee of being undrafted, the small college he played for, and he was a 5th-round pick, and nobody gave a crap about him. And look at him now. He's a wild man, and he anchors that defense. So if you're telling me, I can get a defense, which obviously in redraft, it's like kind of the last position you draft, that or a kicker here, but there's a lot of value to be had in the Colts in terms of in DSTs. You don't look for tackles per se, because it goes from special teams, kick returns, but to interceptions, defensive touchdowns, sacks, batted balls. In this Indianapolis front, DeForest Buckner is there. Guy is massive. You know all about Buckner.
I miss Buckner.
Yeah. So this defense is going to pop off, and if they can find a rhythm early on, they're going to do some massive damage.
I mean, they were DST 1 last year, I'm pretty sure. So if you can get them around DST 10, like that's a huge win.
That's how fast things change and flip flop. Because most,
I don't feel like they got objectively worse on defense, and I think they got objectively better on offense. So theoretically, the defense should be even fresher when it gets on the field. I love that pick. That's
and they're not going to. And one thing I don't think people pay too much attention to is if the offense is going to average 30 points or 31 points a game, that doesn't really put your defense in a bad spot. You're only asked to do so much. You don't have to shoulder the load of the franchise on a game-to-game basis. The offense has got it, and just kind of do your thing, and that lets these guys get more creative. They give them more freedom on the field. They're not all tight. They're nice and loose, warmed up, and they can have fun and do their thing. With being up like that all the time, the defensive coordinator can take some risks, sending an extra blitzer every once in a while, more so than not. So give me the Colts, D.
Love it. Cody, who you got for me? DST value for redraft.
Look, this is the defense that I try to target every single year. Every single year I try to target the same defense, and the reason is always the same. It's DST, special teams. It's 2 of the 3 letters, right? Good special teams cannot be valued enough. And there's nobody better at coaching it than Bill Belichick. There isn't. And he has been a wizard. He has continued to be phenomenal in that department. They block more punts and kicks and do all of the things that make that really work. I love the Patriots defense. They also had a ton of guys opt out last year. A ton of guys opt out. They went and signed Matthew Judon. They brought back Kyle Van Noy, and all of the guys who opted out. That defense is going to be better. The offense has to be more efficient. It was one of the least efficient offenses in football last year. So that has to improve. Give me the Bill Belichick coached defense every day and twice on Sunday. I love the Patriots defense. I mean, they win a lot of football games, and you do that by not letting your opponent score on you. So give me the Patriots.
I'm with you. It's a fundamentals thing, and they're just unbelievable.
They're better than everybody else. They always have.
Absolutely.
And they were solid last year without you talk about the opt-outs, forget about having a bunch of people opt out. Imagine having your best defensive player opt out, which is what happened with Hightower. Getting him back, literally your general is back. Imagine the difference between you're in a major offensive and you've got your general running the show, and then your general just takes a break for a run of it, and your private's running the show instead. Now your general's back. He'll be able to command things on the field. I love the pick of New England there. All right. We got just enough time to do one rookie. So I'm going to change this one up. So this is in a rookie draft, 3rd round or later. Who is a guy you absolutely want to be taking? So Cody, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, you put me on the hot seat a little bit. So I'm gonna.
You're my dynasty guy here.
I'm gonna make sure that I have all of the right information. The dude is unbelievably fast. He did not play for a big school, which is why he is going to kind of go past a lot of people's radars. But he was phenomenal at North Texas. And it's Jalen Darden. And I understand the people get concerned. Well, he didn't play for, big school, this, that, and the other. What better to learn than in the Buccaneers offense? Right. And say what you want about that being a crowded wide receiver room. I get it, because you have Chris Godwin, you have Mike Evans, you have Antonio Brown. Jalen Darden could absolutely get some run. Chris Godwin missed quite a few games last year. Antonio Brown missed quite a few games. It's Antonio Brown. Who knows with him? But that being said, he's a guy who could see the field and could potentially get some work. And what offense is more value to be in than a Tom Brady-led offense? I think that I think he was undervalued a little bit, and I was surprised he was just drafted as late as he was in the actual NFL draft. But if you can get him in the fourth, I'm a big Jalen Darden guy. I mean, the Mean Green, North Texas. You don't see a ton of talent come out of that conference very often. I think the biggest name I can think of off the top of my head is Aaron Jones. But yeah, give me some Jalen Darden.
I love that pick a lot. I asked you for fire and you came right back with it. You love to see it. Chris, let's see if we can get the same from you here. I have high expectations.
Yeah, and I got to switch it up on the fly. I was going to mention Amon-Ra or Nico Collins in Houston, but again, that's too easy. He mentioned Jalen Darden. I'm going to mention Javian Hawkins in Atlanta. So if you look at these, if some of these running backs, right, Sermon, everybody's already anointed him your RB1 because there's so many, Mostert, can he hold up? And they're already gifting Sermon RB1 numbers, and in turn, his ADP in mock drafts has reflected that. In the end of the first round, I've seen him. At the beginning of the second round is more reasonable. But to me, it's Javian Hawkins. He has a clear path to playing time. And look, I know we all saw the video or the photo I think it was yesterday of Mike Davis and his massive quads and all that. But that offense with Julio was hopefully still there, and Pitts, Kelvin Ridley. This offense has a chance to really hum on all cylinders. And again, we all know in today's day and age of football, there's not, aside from Derrick Henry or Ezekiel Elliott in flashes, there's no such thing as a workhorse back anymore. It's always a 1-2 punch. Did you see what Anthony Lynn, the Lions offensive coordinator, said today, that Jamal Williams is going to be our RB1? It's all nonsense. But seriously, Javian Hawkins has a more clear, realistic path to playing time in Atlanta. So you could see cases where, Mike Davis, can he hold up? We don't know. The guy played fantastic in place of CMC last year, but I'd be hard pressed to think that Javian Hawkins isn't going to get a little bit of run. So he's one guy I have my eyeballs pressed on for, OTAs in the summer. We'll see how it goes, what kind of reps he gets, where is he lining up, how often is he on the field. But to me, steal in rookie drafts, Javian Hawkins, talk about free 5th, 6th round, maybe not even drafted. You can add him on waivers for $1 the day after. So give me Javian Hawkins.
Yeah, really my biggest concern about Javian Hawkins is I'm lucky enough to interview some incredibly intelligent people, and tonight is no exception. And a lot of them are talking about Javian Hawkins. So I'm very worried when it comes time for me to draft, I'm not going to be able to get him. Because I think you were talking about Amon-Ra, aka the Sun God. It's a nickname that I want to stick so bad. I honestly, I feel like the hype's already caught up with him. I think it's going to be tough to get him at a value, but Javian Hawkins, that's a guy with, a real shot taking over that backfield, as you said, and I love it.
But really quick, if I may, we're all very tuned into social media, and especially Twitter. And if I've learned anything so far is that the fantasy football community and what we're doing, it's all waves. One week it's this guy, then the next week he's buried and it's a new guy. So we got to ride the waves and get in on the lulls, or get in when it's low value here. And Javian Hawkins might be picking up some steam. Maybe this time next week, that's all people will talk about, but it's flavor of the week. People will move on fast, and just if you're into that selection, just put a little star on it, and then when you draft it in August or over the summer sometime, that wave will have been long gone, and there have been 57 other waves that have come to kind of suppress Javian Hawkins. So I'm not scared at all that his value is going to shoot up.
Yeah, well, the wave I've been writing all night is the content that you two, my incredible guests, have provided. Shots at maybe someone's age aside. It has truly been an honor to have both of you guys on here. You guys have brought a ton of insight, a ton of experience, a ton of value. We literally just spent a ton of time talking about value. So hopefully people didn't miss that. And if they did, don't worry. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. You'll have a chance to catch up. But before we figure out where you can find us at The Lateral, let's find out where we can find you guys. Cody, again, thank you so much for coming on. Where can the people find you? What you got coming up? Plug your stuff.
Look, the name's on the screen, man. At Smash Hit Sports, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can find me there. Real Deal Fantasy is where I am pumping out my fantasy football content. So good old LQ at Real Deal Fantasy. Give us a follow and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming. I actually don't have a bunch coming because I'm getting married in 3 weeks. So
congratulations on that.
Thank you. I know. My 1.01 too. Who knows?
Yeah.
Crazy. I got that first.
It would have been weird if you didn't plug that one, I have to say.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Good on
right?
you.
But no, we're going to have a lot of stuff coming after the honeymoon. Let the batteries recharge a little bit, and we are going to jump right into fantasy football content. I am excited, but follow on the social medias. I am always tweeting because there's always stuff to talk about, fellas. I love it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again.
Yes.
You enjoy that well-earned break. And then, maybe we'll have you back on here to talk a little bit more about some of these rookies. We'll certainly see more of your content out there and be consuming it greedily. Speaking of consuming some content greedily, Chris, we always want to consume your content greedily.
Sure.
So
Well,
where
thank
can
you.
the people find you?
I just want to shout out LQ real quick. We connected
Absolutely.
on Facebook a few years ago, and our friendship has only grown as it is now. So he loves seeing me succeed. I love seeing him succeed. I share anything he does, anything will do, Cody, or the Lateral, absolutely. So shout out to LQ. You can find me at Detroit Beastie. My calling card is DFS. Baseball season is in full swing. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs have started a few days ago. So every morning you can find my NHL DFS graphic, and you can find my MLB DFS graphic. And in terms of seasonal content and stuff, I hate fantasy football players. First one was dropped the other day, still another 2-part series. And that's about it. I don't want to bore everybody else with what I got going on, but you can always reach out to me. I pride myself on my interactions. DMs are always open. I've given out my phone number to anybody who wants to talk. Doesn't even have to be fantasy football. And I can only do so much by myself, but together we can all go farther. So be helpful, be supportive, don't be rude, don't be mean.
Yeah.
Love that, Chris. Love that. And that DFS plug, man. You were awesome at the DFS. Love the hockey stuff. I followed it for a while. That's actually the first how I got into contact with you is through the little DFS hockey. We've had some back and forth on the Twitter.
Absolutely.
Incredibly helpful. Love that content.
Thank you so much, Cody.
Didn't know you guys had such a budding rapport. I'm glad I, paired you two up. Couldn't have gone better. And yeah, Chris, I gotta say, like those sentiments you gave there at the end, I couldn't have said it better myself. So I won't. And instead, I'll tell you where you can find The Lateral, which is over at thelateralff.com, or you can find us on Twitter at TheLateralFF. You can find me on Twitter at McLateralFF. You can find Herms over at Herms NFL. He's always got great stuff too. I personally am going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus. I'm going to take advantage of the long weekend coming up for Memorial Day weekend. Yes, Herbs, that's right. That is you. And, do a little planning, get some more guests for this show, which has truly become a passion of mine, getting to talk to amazing people like you two. It's truly been a blessing and something I could never have foreseen when I started this journey in the off season last year. And I think hopefully we'll have some rankings out for the site soon as well. So, yes, Herms, planning. We have to do planning. I'm telling you.
You're making him nervous.
But one thing I'm not nervous about is the two guests I had tonight. You guys killed it. I said it once. I'll say it too many times. But did that make sense? Hey, we're going to roll with it anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
Cody, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much. And with that, we are